inquiry, the most simplistic way to put it, or the most simple way to put it, is that instead of covering content and just trying to get through it, because you have a state test or because there's some type of pacing guide in place, you have your students uncover the content through some type of productive struggle.
Hi, I'm Mark Barnes, and this is another edition of the Hack Learning Podcast. And you just heard from Ross Cooper, longtime educator, popular blogger, instructional supervisor in a district in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and someone who is an expert in inquiry-based learning. And today we're going to hack inquiry or inquiry-based learning and talk about exactly what this looks like in the classroom, because a lot of people hear the phrase and say, that sounds really great, inquiry-based learning, having kids inquire. But then they say, what does that look like? Ross Cooper calls it a productive struggle, uncovering content with a productive struggle. And once again, I would say, boy, that sounds really cool. Sounds hacky. We like that term in the Hack Learning Podcast. Something is hacky. It's different. It's approached from a different angle, with fresh eyes, a new approach. And what Ross Cooper says sounds like a new approach and something that teachers should be doing. Shouldn't we be encouraging kids to be productive or to have a productive struggle? But again, it sounds great, but what does it look like? And before we even get to what it looks like in terms of inquiry in a classroom, what are the challenges? Because, we're used to doing things a different way. On the Hack Learning Podcast, we talk a lot about traditional education, about the way things used to be, that old attitude of that's the way we've always done it. And the way we've always done instruction typically is to stand and deliver, give kids things, show them something on a board, a whiteboard, a chalkboard, give them a handout, let them practice, lots of multiple choice, worksheet type activities, homework, test, move on. And inquiry is something, as Ross Cooper has put it, that looks a whole lot different. So if we're going to have kids ask questions, if we're going to give them challenges, and we want them to be productive in finding information, what are the challenges of this sort of instructional practice? And let's listen to what Ross Cooper says about those challenges.
I think the biggest challenge is realizing that we could teach beyond the surface with inquiry and that there's more to just getting an answer right on an assessment.
So the challenge is realizing that there's more. That if we use that old school method, if we stand and deliver and we ask kids to regurgitate the information that we give them, that they may ultimately do well on a test, but it doesn't really demonstrate that they've learned anything, and they haven't gone beyond. They haven't found the more, as Ross Cooper puts it. There is more beneath the surface. And the challenge is first realizing this as an educator and then saying, okay, how do I create this inquiry-based classroom? What does it look like?
Another example might be something like science. So a lot of people say, okay, you can't apply inquiry to, it only applies to certain subjects or areas. Well, I do believe that with some thought, or with some planning, it could apply to anything. So even if you're teaching something like plant or animal cells, a lot of times we just have our students memorize the different parts of a cell. But what if you flip on its head a little bit and you just tell students, through some type of report or through some type of argument, you have to tell me what the most important part of the cell is, or what is the one part of the cell that you believe the animal or plant could do without. And through the research and through the forming of the arguments, they're uncovering the importance of each part of the cells, and by doing that, they're also memorizing different parts of the cell, which is, which takes care of the basics as well. So you're not just diving deep, by diving in deep, you're also covering the basics. So really getting students to grapple with content. There's an example in math. There's another example in science where you're maybe formulating an argument or you're taking a stance on a certain issue. But at the end of the day, you're grappling with content. You're diving into it, whether it's manipulatives, whether it's with research, whether it's through argument. And as a result of that, you don't just cover the basics, but you're also possessing that deeper understanding that can then transfer over to unique contexts.
Ross Cooper is saying we don't want to just feed kids information. we're going to have them uncover it, to discover, to ask questions. And in today's digital world, this becomes so much easier than it may have been a long time ago. I'm often very hard on traditional education, that stand and deliver model. But I understand that a long time ago, that is sort of what we had. Teachers had books and they had the kids read books, and then they asked them to write something, or they put something on a board and asked them to copy it, because we didn't really know another way. We didn't have the wealth of tools that we have today. So when you think about Ross Cooper's idea of inquiry, of uncovering the information, he gives examples in multiple subjects. And basically, he's suggesting that we can give kids an idea. In math, we could give them a concept, and then we can send them off in multiple directions to find more information about the concept, to share it with each other, and to actually discover what they can do with the information that they've been given. Could do the same thing in a science class. He talks about using digital tools maybe to go out and research, to say, here's something we want to learn. What questions do you have about it? Let's go ask those questions. Let's search for the information in various places. And that could even be on social networks. And we can work with our peers. We can collaborate. We can plan together. And imagine as an adult, when you have a problem that you want to solve, you don't say, well, let's go to school and ask the teacher to tell us the answer, because you don't have that option. And unfortunately, too often in schools, that's what we have. Kids asking for answers and the teacher just saying, okay, here it is. What we do in the real world is we say we have to solve this problem, and what tools do we have? Well, first of all, what questions do we have? And what do we need to have answered? And where can we go to find that? And let's collaborate to do it. So in inquiry-based learning, what does it look like? I think it looks a little messy. I think it looks like kids working together, using multiple tools, using mobile devices, using the internet, using each other. If they have a book that a teacher has provided, using that as well. But as they are uncovering information, they're continuing to ask more questions. What does this mean? Where should we go next? How can this concept help us solve a problem? This is what inquiry-based learning looks like. And there's so much more to this. So let's continue the conversation at #HackLearning on Twitter, on the Hack Learning Facebook page, and at hacklearning.org. And we'll put Ross Cooper's information in the show notes if you'd like to reach out to him. He is a marvelous resource and writes a fabulous blog about inquiry, project-based learning, and all kinds of other subjects around instruction. So take a look at hacklearning.org, check out the show notes there, and let's keep this conversation going. Thanks for coming by today. We'll see you next time on the Hack Learning Podcast.